Dear Mrs. Dirka, dear students, dear colleagues, dear guests, it is my distinct honor to welcome Esther O'Callaghan to our school today. I had the pleasure of meeting Esther at the Athens Democracy Forum in October last year and was so inspired by her passion and insights on the future of learning and work that I asked her to come and speak to our school. I am thrilled she agreed to join us virtually today, despite unexpected circumstances preventing her from being here in person as originally planned. Esther is an accomplished entrepreneur, international speaker, and passionate advocate of the future of work and learning. She has over 20 years of experience, and she has dedicated her work to tackling youth unemployment. She is also the founder of Hundo, a blockchain learning platform for Generation Z. The goal is to enable young people all over the world to pursue frontier technology jobs by acquiring in-demand digital skills. She has received several awards and recognitions, including Officer of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire for services to the voluntary sector. Today, Esther will speak to us about the future of work and learning. She will introduce new career opportunities that arise in the Metaverse and Web3 and talk about the essential skills and knowledge required to succeed in today's rapidly evolving market. Without further ado, please join me in giving a warm welcome to Esther O'Callaghan.
Thank you so much, and I'm very sorry not to be there in person today, which I'd hoped to be, but life got in the way. Thank you very much for the introduction. My background and the reason that I decided to start Hundo is because when I was at school, I grew up in the UK on free school meals. I came from a very disadvantaged background, which made it a lot harder for me to get started in work. I left school when I was 16, and I had to go straight to work. And for me, I want other young people, including you, to have access to better opportunities than I had, and that I see a lot of young people have, particularly if they come from difficult backgrounds. In 2020, as you all know, the pandemic happened, and the one thing that it had, among the many things that happened, it had a profound impact on young people in terms of job losses. So most young people, when they leave education, will go into a lot of the industries that a global pandemic effectively shut down almost overnight. And we saw young people losing their jobs at 3 to 5 times the rate of every other age group, already in lower paid work. So myself and my co-founder looked really hard at this, and we'd been working with young people for quite some time, helping them get into work. But what I really started to see was all of the technology that you use for fun, gaming, esports, social media, all of the companies where the jobs were still available. Young people had all of the skills that they needed. They just didn't have an access point for how to translate those skills into what employers want to see and what employers are looking for. So that's why we built Hundo, and I'll talk you through a little bit of the platform now. If my screen will actually change. There we go. So Hundo is the world's first immersive careers platform, and we wanted to bring together young people, along with educators and employers, to discover and shape the future of learning. Most schools at the moment offer curriculum, but that doesn't always prepare young people for what you actually need to do when you get to work. So Hundo was designed to be a bridge between the education that you receive in school and make sure that you also are developing the work experience and the skills that you need for when you eventually leave school. And this is why there's 1 billion new tech roles needed by 2030. And if you look at the chart from around 1950, when a man on the moon landed, you can see that you've grown up in a world where things like smartphones are standard, iPads, social media. When I was at school, those things didn't exist. And I'm not super old, but it just shows you how fast technology changes. And now we have, obviously, AI, which is disrupting both education and work, and and technology is an exponential curve that will continue to rise in that way. How do you prepare for that? How do you even know what to study, what to think, and certainly how to translate all of that into work? These are some of the industries when we look at the future of work. So a large part of it, as you can see, is some of the stuff that's probably interesting around esports, gaming, music, entertainment, media, marketing and comms. Digital fashion is a growing sector, but then there's also other areas where we started to see things like work tech. These are the tools that most employers use and very few young people have access to in school. That can be everything from Canva, Figma, CRM systems. Some of these words you may or may not have heard of, and that's kind of the point. That's kind of the problem. Is a lot of it's not just young people who don't know necessarily what these things are. It's also parents and teachers. And so for us, it was about how do we build a platform that collectively enables everybody to learn things that they need to learn together. And this is the thing that makes me laugh, because obviously I grew up in Web 1. That's what the internet used to look like on the screen. Web 2 is kind of what you're growing up in right now. Obviously you'll recognise some of the social media apps, eBay, etc. And then Web 3 is kind of, what's interesting is you're the generation that's now living between Web 2 and Web 3. And that's quite difficult because it's disrupting a lot of the ways that we think about things. Web 2 is predominantly run by centralised major corporations like Facebook, whereas Web 3 is a lot more around a decentralised, so much more less centralised, a lot less control in the hands of 2 or 3 big industry players. And it's also opening up a whole range of skills, both technical skills and also soft skills. So some of the biggest jobs in Web 3 are around things like community management, as well as being able to code on, being able to build on blockchain, be a blockchain developer. So it spans. It's not just about having technical skills, it's also about all of the other things that go around it. Digital marketing is slightly different in Web 3 compared to Web 2 because it's around building community rather than building followers. Everybody has a different view of the metaverse. The things that I think about are predominantly Roblox and the big gaming platforms like Fortnite. They are already metaverse spaces that some of you or many of you might already operate within. Where the world is shifting is that we will exist in an increasingly immersive landscape. The way that we use the internet now is still very two-dimensional. I'm sitting here on a screen. you're sitting in a room listening to me, whereas actually over the course of your career, you'll start to see us all appearing more as avatar-based characters within worlds, including in working environments. Some of the big corporations now, like Meta, Microsoft, and PwC, which is one of the big four consulting firms in the world, they're all moving towards having career centres that are in more immersive environments. So it's changing. It's interesting for me because for you guys, like I said, you're living through the transition. Your children, if you can think that far ahead, your grandchildren, they will grow up in an increasingly immersive world in the same way that an iPad or a smartphone for you now is normal. For them, headsets, probably, hopefully, ideally not headsets, ideally just kind of glasses. They're a lot easier to use and wear. That's the kind of world that they will grow up in. And I guess you have to be maybe a little bit older to see that is going to be the case. This is a little bit about us to show you how tiny we are at the moment. But you can see that there's a huge amount of money going into this space. And so for us, we don't think it's if the metaverse is going to happen. It's more a question of like when. When will we all be interoperating in a much more immersive and digitized world? These are some of the screenshots of some of the things that we do. So for us, the two main things that Hundo offers today for young people and parents and educators is the ability to actually experience some of these spaces and start to work within them. One thing that we do every month is CareerCon, which is our immersive careers event where we talk about the different industries. So this month is all about work tech. July was about AI, machine learning, and it's co-designed. You can watch it. You can watch it online, or you can also actually get into the spaces and start to look around using your avatar, which you can create on the platform. This was an immersive careers expo that we did with a local authority in the UK. Which is essentially to replace boring careers fairs because they haven't broadly changed since I was going to careers fairs, which was a long time ago. This is what I talked about earlier in terms of work tech. Most schools don't have courses or lessons that teach how to use these tools. But the minute that you leave school, this is an example of some of all of the tools that you actually need to be able to use. And so Hundo works in partnership with schools like yours to make sure that you are getting access to the tools that you're going to need to help you get better paid work in the future. This is what the platform looks like. So if you sign up, it's free, obviously, for young people. You can create your profile. We have a partnership with Ready Player Me, so you can create your own avatar and represent yourself in the way that you choose, rather than a headshot or a photograph, which you may not want to use. The purpose of that is in the future, obviously. Well, even today, you can then take that avatar into some of the immersive spaces that we have, like the art gallery that I showed you earlier. And this is where you can start to build your digital skills profile. This is a constant real-time record, not just of the things that you're learning in school. Not everybody is 100% academic. Lots and lots of people have other things that they do, again, online, side hustles, whatever it is. And we want you to be able to put all of that into a digital skills profile that you can then not just share with employers, but also start to learn more about the transferable skills that you have. A lot of people think that if they're good at something, then they have to go down a particular path. That doesn't always have to be the case. And being able to see how your skills that you've learned both at school but also in your own time, how all of that gives you a much stronger skills profile. And what we ultimately want to do is replace the CV resume, so that you have one source of truth where you can continue for the rest of your whole career to be developing the skills that you need for the future of work. Because even today, if you are a blockchain developer, for example, if you're using a particular language, you will need to be able to upskill and reskill, because that's how fast everything is changing. And what we want to make sure is that, unlike when we started Hundo, where young people faced some of the worst unemployment because of the pandemic, we want to make sure that young people like you have got the best possible chance of being able to move forward and get the work that you deserve, and to be able to earn a decent living, even if it's like me, working for yourself, or if you're working for somebody else. The way that the platform works, just again to show you, so CareerCon, which I mentioned earlier, obviously we have this every month, and it's live, but then you can also watch it on demand. It's all of the content, all the information comes from industry experts, it comes from employers, so that you can not just be sort of reading about work, but you can also be getting to interact and meet with people who actually are in the businesses, the industries, and the sectors that ultimately you will also be looking for work in. So I hope that's given you a very brief insight into Hundo, into why we exist, and very much looking forward to continuing to work with the German School in Athens to look at how we can support you as learners on your, not just your learning journey, but also throughout your career. Thank you. It's quite unnerving to see people clapping when it's silent.
Thank you, Esther, for your inspiring speech. So let's begin the questions and answer discussion. And if anyone has questions or thoughts, please don't hesitate to raise your hand. So don't be shy, and you can ask questions. We're eager to hear.
Do I ask away? All right. So congratulations on the whole company, first of all. My question is, you mentioned that you believe Honda can actually replace CVs as a concept. Is that right? By when do you think this can actually occur?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So one of the issues with CVs is they give you one snapshot, one data point about what a young person can do. They're not a rich source of knowledge, in terms of the whole, as I said, in the presentation, young people have a huge amount of skills that you never see on a CV, and also one of the reasons that youth unemployment is always much higher in youth age groups than older people is because obviously the process is a CV goes onto a job board. And a young person's CV, at the age of 18, broadly looks exactly the same in terms of not a huge amount of experience usually, and certainly doesn't give you much more detail beyond that. At both an algorithmic and human level, there is a huge amount of bias that occurs in that whole journey with the CV into a job board. We ran tests where we would, in one day, you can submit a CV 100 times, for 100 different jobs on a job board, and if you haven't used keywords, particular things, you will get a 0 rate response. So not only do you not get any not only do you definitely not get a job interview, you also have no idea why you're not getting a response. So for us, the reason that we wanted to replace that with a digital skills profile is so that employers come directly to Hundo instead of going through job boards, because they know that every young person who has augmented their education with skills-based learning on the platform is work ready, is able to demonstrate without having to write a covering letter and put a CV together. They can see in real time these are the skills, this is what this person can do and can actually has already done on the platform through doing virtual work experience programs. So that's the reason why. In terms of the actual technology itself, it's blockchain based. So that means that each credential, each micro credential that you get on the platform, it sits on chain. So it's validated and verified, because I don't know if many of you have been on LinkedIn, which is currently the platform that is like classed as like the professional social network. You can write anything you want on there. There is no way to verify what a person has done. Whereas if it's a credential that's on chain, it's an absolute piece of evidence that says you absolutely can do that job. So that's the reason why we want to replace it. Will we get there? How long is it going to take? So for me, I think it's going to take sort of at least 3 to 5 years in terms of mass adoption of a digital profile as opposed to a CV. But for me, that's why we start working with young people while they're still in education. If you're 14 today, let's say in 5 years' time, that's when you'll be actively looking at potentially entering the job market. It's making sure that instead of having to sit and look at job applications that ask you for at least 3 years experience when you've just left education, which makes no sense, it means that you can actually say, yes, I have all of this work experience. This is everything that I've done. And that employer will be able to interact directly with you on the platform. And the reason for all of that is to get rid of the hiring bias that occurs. So come back and ask me in 3 years' time how we're getting on, and then ask me again in 5 if we actually made it.
Thank you very much.
I would like to ask you, according to your expertise and your experience, what dangers do you think are lurking in the potential of the metaverse? Thank you.
Yeah, great question. I'm also a parent. So my son is 19. So I've watched young people grow up through the advent of social media, which, as I say, I lived in a world where that wasn't even part of it. So this is something over the last 20 years in the main, and certainly the last 10, where I've seen a huge amount of issues. I've done a lot of work before Hundo with young people who suffer with mental health severe mental health issues, including teenage self-harm, and I've seen a direct correlation between the way that young people are expected to show up on social media and platforms with influencers and all of that, and the kind of the correlation between that and declining mental health, and that's been a concern of mine for a long time. It's simply something that we didn't have. I didn't have to worry about something stupid that I did being recorded forever, and going viral, so for me it's a huge issue with Web 2 already, something that hasn't been solved for effectively at all, and that concerns me. The risks remain, in the metaverse. You already see situations with things like AI, most recently. So I don't think that it is without risk at all. I don't think it's worse than what we already have. And what I do know is in Web 2, there was not really a place for people like me. There is a massive lack of diversity. There's a massive, women in tech is still a battle. But in Web 3, Metaverse, there are a lot more of us. There are a lot more of us who are actively engaging in things like the Metaverse Standards Forum, making sure that there are some protections and that there are ethical considerations. We are not going to win 100%, but I would say that what I see is definitely, a much bigger sort of will, because it's more decentralized, so that you're not actually with major Web 2 platforms. The way that they make money, is like keeping people engaged, keeping people constantly scrolling. So for me, it's kind of going, if there is something that offers something different and that is alternative to that, that of itself is a good thing. But it's not without risks. For me personally, I think the more diversity that we have across Web3, the metaverse, I actually think the more young people who are actively engaged in building it and being part of it, rather than it being something that's forced on them, I think we have a better chance of turning around some of the worst things that happen in Web 2 and try to stop them happening again in Web 3.
Thank you.
Which are the two most interesting jobs in Metaverse?
Oh wow! It depends. It depends on what you enjoy doing. That is a big question. Two most exciting jobs.
Παιδιά, right, please be quiet. Be quiet so that we're going to be able to listen.
So I think, I guess some of the interesting things, I guess, are for me, is on the innovation side. So I'm really fascinated by the actual foundational technologies. So for me, I think some of the most exciting jobs on the technical side are in things obviously like blockchain, but also digital assets, and then something that I'm doing quite a bit of work on at the moment is something called zero knowledge, which is about adding a privacy layer over blockchain so that your data, even if it's stored on chain, which means that it's on a ledger, so it's visible. It means there's kind of like privacy layers over the top. That's on the technical side of the jobs. On the more other jobs. I think community building, building decentralized communities, I think is really interesting, because it's very different to acquiring users or followers, which is what social media, mainstream channels are now. It's like, how do you actually build a valuable community? And then I think, some of the those are sort of those are two things for me. And then also building metaverse spaces. I think building your own, the nice thing about it is you can build your own. You can have multiple worlds that you can build. So that's a bit more than 3 jobs. But I think the point for me broadly is, if there's something that you're interested in across any of the industries that exist today, there is a metaverse, version of it being built somewhere. So even if you're interested in architecture, for example, building digital environments is something that you can, that is a passion that you can pursue. If you're into fashion, you can get into digital fashion. So I think it totally depends on you and what you're into.
Can you explain the association of Facebook with Metaverse?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch the question. Could you repeat the question? Sorry.
Can you please explain the association of Metaverse with Facebook?
So Facebook rebranded, as you'll know, to Meta, and that was the company essentially trying to own the future of the internet, future of the metaverse. For me, it achieved 2 things. It obviously propelled the word metaverse into much more mainstream awareness. It's a concept that has been around for a lot longer, but the Facebook rebrand really sort of put it into mainstream awareness. It is for people like me, it's the actual absolute opposite of what people like me who work in the space see as the open metaverse, which is a constellation of immersive environments where you can interoperate. The principles, of decentralization are around things like self-sovereign data, which is your right to own your own data. That is at complete odds with the Facebook business model, which is all about centralized data ownership. So on the one hand, it put the word into everybody's consciousness, but on the other side, that's certainly not the metaverse that I'm working in. It's not the one that I want to live in either. And the way that I think about it is, if you've ever read the book or watched the film Ready Player One, if you watch that and think about Facebook today, and then think about the open metaverse that we're all building or trying to build, which is the one where it's actually owned by the people who build it, work in it. It's not owned by a corporation. That's kind of those are sort of like the 2 sides of the word, and obviously Facebook's association with it.
My question is, how do you ensure that users of your platform, that is, employers and employees, do not misuse it?
So we obviously, for us, the platform, we use military grade encryption we have a social app where cohorts of learners can learn together with their educators. Fundamentally, your data on our platform is yours. So it's up to you what you choose to share. Everything that's on there isn't visible without your consent. So an employer can't just log on and look at it. It's not like LinkedIn or Instagram, where you can just log in and see everything all of the time. As I talked about earlier, the principle of self-sovereign data is a key fundamental principle for us. So you can't. It's not like you have a profile and then everybody can just see that profile. It's yours. It's private. It's encrypted, and it's up to you how much or how little of that you choose to share. And even if you have shared it with an employer, for example, you can also revoke that permission. So that's some of the things. Obviously, in terms of GDPR as standard in terms of data protection, but there's an extra layer of that. And then obviously for us, we work with young people under 16. So for us, there's a whole element of child protection elements that we've had to build into that as well. So it's something that we take. It's something that's fundamental to our work. If you have a profile on Hundo, it's your profile. It's up to you who you share it with or not.
Thank you.
Who else? Παιδιά, για σκεφτείτε ερωτήσεις. Έλα, πέρα.
Thank you very much. So, you mentioned AI, digitalization, and everything for future jobs. My question is this. We aim for innovation. If the young people have so much information at their disposal and answers to all of their questions, what will motivate them to learn and innovate furthermore? Thank you very much.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't catch the question at the end. Sorry, just it clipped out.
Yes, so the question is this. If the young people, with the digitalization, the power of AI, they have so much information in their disposal.
Yeah.
And so many answers to their questions. What will motivate them to learn and innovate in the future?
That's an incredible question. Let me think about that. I think there's two parts to it, I suppose. You come from a generation that has more access to information 24/7 than any other generation in the history of the world. And it means that people can start to build their own business. You know, there is so much that you can do now very, very rapidly that just simply wasn't possible in generations before yours. But I look at the numbers and I look at the data, and the problem of youth unemployment, and that's not just about whether you have a job with somebody else, because, you know, like I've worked for myself my entire career. The youth unemployment rates in all countries now aren't going down. They're getting worse. So for me, that speaks to a fundamental systemic and structural issue. If we have more access, like you said, to the tools and the technology and the information all of the time, why is the problem getting worse? And I think some of that is around education hasn't. It's not that it hasn't. Education can't keep pace with how fast things are changing, and just because a new technology arrives, and AI is the most absolute example of just how fast that's happened, it doesn't necessarily mean that user adoption will happen as quickly. And what we see is a huge amount of resistance to change, and a huge amount of fear of change in older generations. I don't see that with young people so much at all, comparatively. But for me, if we have all of the things that you've said that we have, and that is true, why is the problem getting worse? And that's the bit that I have tried to, not just me, but that's the bit that people like me, who work in this space, that's the bit that we're trying to solve for. And I think some of that is around, it's one thing to have access to information and technology. It's another thing to be able to practically apply that in a way that means that you can generate money to live. And I think that's the bit that we're trying to, that's fundamentally the bit that we're trying to solve for. So I don't know if that answered your question very well, but I hope so.
Thank you.
And actually, while we're just waiting for Nook, actually, just as I'm thinking of that, it's not just, the big thing for me is it's not just about, it's actually in many ways easier to learn harder skills, like technical skills. It's all the other things that you need around that, like understanding your pay slip, understanding the difference between gross income and net income, understanding, how credit works, understanding, how to operate in a work environment when you've only ever been in an educational setting. There's a lot of essential skills that sit around hard technical skills, and that's you kind of need both as you go forward.
Okay, it's me again, the first questionee. My second question is, you mentioned that 30,000 users are between the age of 16 and 25, I think. Why is your target audience that young? Why are you not trying to also target people that are actually trying to look for better jobs? Maybe like people who have already studied, maybe have a degree in something, and now have enough skills to even write in your website.
Yeah, that's a fair question. It's because mostly as a founding team, myself and my co-founder, our expertise is working at the very early stage of unemployment and with young people particularly. So we built a business based around our expertise. I agree with you, there is a massive need to upskill people aged 50 and over as well. There are, I think I said earlier as well, there's it's actually 1.1 billion new tech roles needed by 2030. There aren't 1.1 billion young people who are going to do those jobs at the same time. But for us, it was more around we focus on what we know best, and starting at a much younger age means that we're starting to break the systemic nature of the reasons why people struggle to get work at all age groups. Frankly, as a small startup, if we tried to build a platform for everybody, we'd fail. We'd fail really, really quickly. But I think ultimately for me, if we build a platform that young people enjoy using and that they get value from, then it can be a platform that works for everybody in the end. But we started much younger because particularly I can't speak totally to the Greek and the education system and the school you're in, but broadly speaking, young people are required to make choices about their education. The exams that they're going to do, whether they're going to go to university or somewhere else, really, really young. And so for us, it's about helping almost front load that knowledge base to help people make better decisions at a younger age, so that they're not struggling by the time they get past 25, 26 and beyond. So those are the reasons why. It's not that I don't think other people need help. It's just going, we know how to work with young people, at a young age, and that's the bit that we solve for.
Thank you very much. One very quick follow-up question, if I may. Yeah. Where do you get the number 1 billion new tech jobs from? Because that seems quite high for me in 7 years. That seems like, I don't know if that's realistic, really.
No, absolutely fine. It's a World Economic Forum statistic. So it's based on, it's based on global data around the number of technical roles. For me, every single job in the world, by 2030 is going to have an element of technology, even if that's just using email. That is a technology, of itself. But the statistics are World Economic Forum, and you can they're live. You can Google World Economic Forum, jobs, and it will give you a breakdown of the sectors and the industries.
So my question is also kind of connecting to his second question he asked. When you target people older than 25, how do you plan on teaching them also how to use your platform? And because many people don't know how to use most of these platforms, so how do you try to teach them, or how do you plan to?
So our platform is very easy. You sign up with an email and a password, and you can watch content on a normal computer. We deliberately, for exactly what you said, there is no point trying to get people to use technology that they've never used before. It's confusing, and you won't get adoption that way. As I said earlier, we built Hundo to be a bridge between the world that we're all living in now and the one that we're all going to have to increasingly start to operate within over the next decade. So we wanted to keep it as simple as possible, and that's why. I've lost my train. What I was going to say was a lot of the if you want to go into the more immersive spaces, you can. But you don't have to. So with CareerCon, for example, if you want to take your avatar and go and watch it, in a metaverse space, you can. But if you just want to sit and watch it like this, you also can do that. There's no point. Nobody is going to be. Headsets at the moment, they cost a lot of money. And I also don't see a world in the future where we're all walking around with headsets. That's not the future that I want for anybody. For me, it's about how do you bring both things together in a way that's actually useful. There's no point just doing it for the sake of it, just because it looks cool or it sounds good. It's more just about how do we help people to successfully transition from where they are now to where we're going. My grandma, just as an absolute example, she was a highly skilled speed typist in the army. So she could type really, really fast on those old typewriters. I could not ever get her to understand how to press play, stop, record on a video recorder. You have to try as hard as possible to enable people to use technology rather than make it seem like this impossible thing, because then they're not going to use it. They're just not going to look at it. So for us, it's a very simple way to get onboarded. It's a way that everybody onboards at the moment, and that was designed. That was designed on purpose. It's also why at the moment we haven't gone mobile. We've stayed desktop. So that people can use it, because our platform is obviously for people to use while they're still in education, in class with their teachers. And of course, in a lot of schools, you're not allowed to have smartphones in the classroom. So we don't get everything right. We won't get everything right, but we do try to consider these things with everything that we build.
Okay. One last question.
Do you think that at school, as in physical school, going to school and being in a classroom with other people, will someday be replaced by online school and AI and whatever?
I hope not. I watched what happened to young people when they were just locked in, having to do online learning, online schooling. That's not, I say that as a parent as well. That's not the future that I hope for at all. I think a blended learning, I think is important. I think I'd like to see school change in terms of when they're a place where people can actually get together and socialise, do more physical activities, more sports, and that we can use immersive learning as a way to kind of make learning more interesting, make it more dynamic, make it more engaging, and make it more fun. So I think that I didn't enjoy school at all, but I loved learning. And I think if we can take, what I'd like to see is that we take the best of what education offers now, and we look at how platforms, like Hundo, but lots of others, how they actually enhance the school experience rather than replace it altogether. I don't think we should just throw out something that's good for something just because it's new.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Esther, for your inspiring speech and for the questions and answers. And we have a present for you. One moment. With
the questions were amazing, by the way. Thank you very much. Keep me on my toes.
This is Mrs. Dirker, our headmistress.
I would only say thank you very much for your interesting input, and all the best for you, and we will be happy if you come to us soon, and if we could see us from face to face. Okay.
So this is a collage of artworks of the students that prepared it for you. And since
Amazing.
You're not here, you can send us your address and we can send it to you. Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye.